Hello there, my music lovers and audio addicts. I'm George from Audiophile Heaven, and today we are having a look at the Earstudio ES100 MK2. This is a Bluetooth receiver, just like FiiO BTR5, and FiiO BTR5 is its main competitor. And today we are going to see just how good the ES100 MK2 stands against the FiiO BTR5. The unboxing of the ES100 MK2 is very simple. You get it, the unit, and you get one tiny shorty cable for charging. One thing that would stop me from testing whether it works or not as a USB DAC is the fact that it has a micro USB connector, which is known to resist quite a bit less than the Type-C counterparts. This being said, I will do the test right now actually. So just like FiiO BTR5, the ES100 MK2 can work as a USB DAC, so you don't have to use it only as a Bluetooth receiver. This being said, using the micro USB cable is quite disappointing because micro USB is a pretty old standard right now. Besides review samples, this is the only device that has a micro USB cable in my home, so I am not using anything that uses one anymore. It's quite disappointing to have it. The cable is way too short to be practical, but it can act as both a data and a charging cable, despite its length. And this length would actually be quite good if you are connecting it to an OTG connector to your smartphone. In that situation, yeah, shorter cables are better. And just like FiiO BTR5, this one has both a balanced and a single-ended connector. The ES100 MK2 is priced at $90 at the moment of making this video review, down from $100, which should be a bit cheaper than FiiO BTR5, which is typically priced around $120 at the moment I'm filming this video review. It is a slightly less expensive alternative. Being placed in between FiiO BTR5 and FiiO BTR3K, I would say that it is actually considerably better than FiiO BTR3K. So if your question is whether you should get BTR3K or this one, just go with this one. BTR3K has considerably lesser power, it has a much warmer, smoother sound that has less detail, and the ES100 MK2 not only has more driving power but is more detailed, more dynamic, more punchy. The sound is generally considerably better, so the ES100 MK2 is the better Bluetooth receiver in this situation. It has 4 buttons, volume buttons and playback button, and it has this on-off button that doubles as a play/stop button. It has this little LED at the front that keeps lighting, telling you that it is turned on and that it is working. You cannot turn it off as far as I know. It does not come with a little display like FiiO BTR5, but it is very lightweight. It is lighter than FiiO BTR5, so it is better for running and jogging and better for portability. It actually feels less well built, to be honest. It creaks a bit when you press on it, it just does this noise. It has a microphone that you can use to take phone calls, and typically connecting IEMs that have a microphone would still use the microphone on the ES100 MK2, at least with my smartphone. And the version I have gotten right now in 2021 actually comes with the latest firmware installed, and it has both Bluetooth 5 and it actually transmits high resolution signal through that Bluetooth because I installed their own application. This is probably the first time and the last time I'm going to be saying this, but the Earstudio application is really good. It is great, guys. This one totally deserves your attention. The application not only lets you use some equalizer, which is not very basic. You can actually select whether you want narrow or wide bands for the equalizer, but it also allows you to overdrive the ES100 MK2, and I do take that more as a warning. So it tells you when you are overdriving the headphones and the IEMs, because it can go a bit above its normal level. You can actually stop that. You can enable it to use twice the current it typically draws, although that comes at the cost of some battery life. It doesn't have the best battery life. And on the single-ended connector, it was able to drive something as crazy as the Avant One Pro Planar headphones. Those are some crazy heavy headphones, pretty hard to drive, and this one is able to max out on the volume. Of course, using the maximum volume actually sounds a bit distorted, and I wouldn't exactly call it distorted, I would call it overdriven, and that was the exact word I had in mind when describing it. And this is exactly how they describe it. It is overdriven, so it can overdrive things. You can stop that from the application. The application also allows you to connect it to 2 sources if you want to have 2 smartphones connected to it. And that's about it. I have not noticed any other useful stuff in the app, but for those things, the app is actually quite good. I like making some MQ profiles on the go, and for that it is quite good. As I was saying, this is the type of device you're supposed to use via Bluetooth. It is not supposed to be used as a USB DAC. I do recommend using FIO BTR5 as a USB DAC a bit more than using it as a Bluetooth receiver, but for the ES100 Mark II, I do recommend using it as a Bluetooth receiver more than I do recommend using it as a USB DAC. This is because it is more convenient. It is lighter. You can pin it to your shirt or shorts or whatever you like. You can take phone calls if you have it pinned here. The microphone is actually quite decent in quality. There is one more feature that the app allows you to do. It can actually use its microphone for pass-through. And that basically means that it can record the ambiental noise and you can actually hear that mixed with your music. That is useful if you are in a crowded place and if you don't want to be fully isolated from what's going on outside. All in all, I think it is very handy. Not the best build. As I said, it creaks and that annoys me a bit. It is not the most trusty of things, but at the same time, it is lighter than FIO BTR5. It is a bit smaller in physical size, and all in all, it has a beautiful sound. Earstudio is quite optimistic about it and quotes about 14 hours of battery life, but that is of course if you use lower power codecs, lower volumes, and if you are driving stuff on the single-ended output only. If you are using it in a more mixed matter, like using Bluetooth 5 with LDAC, if you are using high resolution files, if you are using it with EQ enabled, if you are using it in a more realistic fashion, I'll be honest with you, it will last for 7 hours up to 9 hours, which is very decent. It is actually very good. I think that it lasts about as much as FIO BTR5. There isn't a huge difference between them once you use both in the same way, which is at their maximum. I would not purchase this for MP3s only and using it with IEMs at half the volume. I'm not that kind of user, so I'll be honest with you. I'm the type of guy who maxes out the volume, uses only FLAC files even on his smartphone. I'm the type of guy who does things crazy audiophile, and this is the point. This is audiophile heaven. You should expect me to be pretty crazy about music, otherwise why are you watching me? I'm not here to be very friendly about the unit. I'm here to tell you honestly how I feel it sounds and it works like. This is something I have just noticed, but I think that if you are looking very closely, you can see the contacts inside, the jacks, which is pretty cool. The balance jack sounds a bit better than the single-ended jack, which is something I did notice, but it is not that much better. If you only have single-ended cables, it is still a worthy investment. You shouldn't really stop yourself from purchasing the ES100 Mark II because you don't have balanced cables. It sounds a bit better, but not that much better. I couldn't be less bothered about not using balanced or using balanced with this one. With FIO BTR5, the difference was a bit greater, and FIO BTR5 tends to sound quite a bit better on the balanced. You should go for the balance. Now, the sound of the Earstudio ES100 Mark II is the type of sound that is very natural, fuller on the low end. It is not a very thin sounding DAC. It is smoother on the top end, but not overly smooth. It can reproduce some very natural sounding cymbals. It has quite a bit of sparkle, quite a bit of energy. It is very punchy, very dynamic, very good driving power. As I said, that is a huge thing for it. The driving power is just magical. I think that it has an excellent shape for the power it is able to output. I also think that it has a nice soundstage. Quite wide, not very deep. The depth is decent, but the width is very good, very holographic around you. I was able to drive HiFiMan HE-A400SA, which I have somewhere in the back. I don't know if it is visible actually. That is a headphone I was able to drive with it. So HiFiMan Sundara will work too, and that includes pretty much all of the hard to drive planar magnetic headphones in that price range, so below $500 US, and that is great for something this small. It looks a bit like Sansa Clip player if you ever had one. I had a Sansa Clip before, and it reminds me a bit of that. Has the same shape, same ergonomics. It has this microphone. I like the microphone. The microphone quality is decent. It is not the best though. And you can actually quickly test that if you enable the pass-through mode. You will notice a lot of noise while it is brushing against your clothes. So just keeping it like that, it will poof, 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 like I was touching my microphone. So yeah, that is quite inconvenient. And every single EM with a microphone, even FIO BTR5 has this issue. Everything that will brush against your clothes will sound like it is brushing against your clothes, and even holding it in the hand will actually result in some handling noise. So this is not a professional microphone. I would not recommend it if you are planning to do some vlogging or some video recording. It is not for that. For that I have recorders. I can recommend you many other things, including lavalier mics. But yeah, it is decent for a Bluetooth receiver, and $90 I do recommend it more than most of its competition. There is that QDelix unit, the 5K from QDelix, which is comparable to the ES100 Mark II. The two have a pretty similar overall sound. I do like the fact that the Earstudio unit comes with an app. It is a very mature app, good overall abilities, very nice EQ implementation. I do think that this one looks a bit more ergonomic and a bit more modern than the 5K from QDelix. I do think that the QDelix unit can sound a bit better in certain scenarios, especially if you are driving only IEMs and if you have something that you want to sound more neutral. ES100 Mark II tends to be a bit warmer, a bit smoother in the treble, but just a tiny bit, and it tends to be a bit wider more than it is deep. The QDelix 5K was a bit deeper, it is a bit more neutral all around, it has slightly more treble expression and a slightly more sparkly treble, but at the same time, if you were making a choice between the two, I do think that I would recommend the ES100 Mark II a bit more to you, because it is more practical. The QDelix company is made by employees that worked for Earstudio, so yeah, both companies are great. Earstudio tends to sell quite a few more units, and at the same time that means slightly better warranty and more money in your pocket to purchase some good IEMs, good headphones, and more awesome audio stuff. Speaking of purchasing, I hope that I have purchased your hearts with my content and with my videos. I hope that you will consider subscribing to Audiophile Heaven. Also leave a like on this video, it helps me out so much, I can't tell you. Don't forget, I make only $1 to $2 per month from YouTube videos. It is very low, so yeah, if you could use some Amazon affiliate links in my video description, if you could donate a dime, that would help me greatly. Now, I really thank you for watching. I hope you have the loveliest of weeks in there, and I hope we'll get to see each other really, really soon. Bye bye.